Hi, I'm Paul Mahoney and this is Proper Wealth, the show where we discuss all things wealth creation, including property. Today's a very special show as it's a live link between Australia and the UK, and joining me today is Alex Doonan from Acentus Real Estate. Alex, is it true that you were born in Liverpool and lived there all your life? If so, you must have seen some remarkable changes over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a very proud resident of Liverpool of 35 years or just a little bit over. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to offer a valuable insight to you today on the city.
What is it that you think has changed the most in Liverpool over recent years, Alex? Is it still stuck in the 60s and the days of the Beatles and the romance of Merseyside, or has it moved on from there?
Unrecognisable from the city that I grew up in. Very much change has happened in the city. The big catalyst for that was in the early 2000s. The city achieved a lot of grants from European money and stuff, and really done very, very well with the spending of that money, with the climax of that being in 2008 when Liverpool was awarded European City of Culture. That was a big boost for the city, brought a lot of eyes and attention onto the city, and I'm very happy to say the city's actually gone on from that point, which, as I say, was a lot of funding coming into the city from grants, and the acid test for that, I really think, is if the private sector moves in thereafter and starts to put their money in. Obviously those guys are very focused on a return, and I'm very, very pleased to say that since Liverpool has had an influx of funding, the private sector has come in and really taken up the mantle now. We've seen some major developments in recent years, some £10 billion spent on the city.
Going back a little, Albert Dock was literally just a dock, wasn't it? And now it's completely changed with the refurbishment. 6.3 million tourists a year, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That sort of regeneration and attractiveness, that must be affecting the buy-to-let market in Liverpool, isn't it, Alex?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a great point that you make regards the Albert Dock, and it's a very relevant point to look at the city from its history and also where it is today. Liverpool was famously once the second most important city in the British Empire, and that was actually founded on the strength of its docklands and its position inside of the United Kingdom. Obviously there was a decline in the 60s and 70s and whatnot, but I'm glad to say the city is now on a massive resurgence. And as you mentioned there, yeah, the Albert Dock, one scheduled for demolition, derelict, full of silt in the mid part of the 60s and whatnot. And we look at it today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's the largest free tourist attraction in the north of England. As you quite rightly mentioned, Paul, 6.3 million visitors last year alone. We're seeing huge increases in the visitor numbers year on year. The Albert Dock houses 4 fantastic museums, the latest being the Museum of Liverpool, which actually has the best window view in the UK, so if you're in the city, do come and pay some attention to that. We have the world famous Tate Art Gallery in there, plenty of shops, bars and restaurants. And as I say, the figures are improving year on year for that. And last year we saw a 29% increase in the amount of UK visitors visiting the Albert Dock, and that was just from the coaches alone. So obviously there's many more people visiting, trains, planes, automobiles, everything else coming into the city now. So really, really positive sounds coming from there, and that just expands to the rest of the city, really.
Can you tell me more about Liverpool One, a massive regeneration project right in the centre of the city? How has that affected Liverpool overall? And what is Liverpool One?
Liverpool One is say brand new. It's been open for around about 2 years now. Just shy of £1 billion worth of investments. I think it was around about 920 million. It's the largest outdoor shopping centre in the entire of the United Kingdom. It's the 4th largest shopping centre by any stretch of the imagination. Just next door, Hilton have just opened a brand new hotel. So yeah, that's doing great things for the city in terms of obviously keeping up the attraction for the tourists coming in. High-end goods in there now, so you can see all of the you know, the designer goods and everything are available in those shops. And as you quite rightly mentioned as well, the local economy is benefiting massively with that, with regards to employment directly for the shops and services that are there, and also in the service industry supporting all of those retailers in Liverpool one as well. Yeah.
And we can't really mention Liverpool without mentioning the football. Where do you stand on the football, Alex?
I stand on football as football's a beautiful game for everybody to enjoy. I do have an affinity for one of the local teams in Liverpool, that being Everton. Combined, Everton and Liverpool are the two most successful football clubs in the entire of the country. Nowhere else has done better in terms of winning trophies and leagues and everything else like that. So both world famous teams, steeped in history, and are both doing their part for the city as well with regards to the economy. Liverpool have recently redeveloped Anfield Stadium, making that one of the largest stadiums in the UK, with hospitality facilities second to none. And Everton Football Club have recently purchased the site in the Northern Docklands in Liverpool from Peel, and that's on the Bramley Moor Dock. And that is going to be a brand new 50 to 60,000 seater multi-purpose stadia going in the city. So that's going to require all kinds of new road and rail and infrastructure links going over to the site. So again, all positive news for the city.
Okay, moving back to property. Have property prices risen in Liverpool, and are they set to continue to rise, would you say?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're seeing a massive influx of interest, particularly from the southeast and our overseas investors. And one of the major attractions to Liverpool is its absolutely fantastic average property value. Standing currently today, depending on which figures you look, somewhere between 120 and 130,000 pounds. The UK average being slightly over 200,000, and that does exclude London as well. So very, very quickly, we can all see that we've got around about £70,000 worth of appreciation to move into, just to get Liverpool on a level playing field with the rest of the country. Prices are appreciating between 6 and 7%, have done for the last 4 or 5 years in the country. So yeah, the property market's really strong up in Liverpool at the moment, and rightly so. It's attracting an awful lot of attention, as I say, from the south and particularly overseas.
With property prices in Liverpool still well behind London and also some of the other Midlands and northwest cities like Birmingham and Manchester, it's obviously quite attractive to buy-to-let investors. Would you say there's still a lot more potential to be had in Liverpool so far as beyond the current growth in price it's already had?
Absolutely, as I say, I mean, for the past 4 to 5 years, we're looking at sort of 6 to 7% capital appreciation year on year. And that's born out of a multitude of things, really. Obviously, the strengthening local economy, the relatively low property price, and the slowing of the appreciation and indeed the rental yields that buy-to-let investors are able to make elsewhere in the UK.
Before we go to a break, Alex, can you talk to me about Brexit? How would you say that might affect Liverpool?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Brexit will bring about a lot of change, and in times of change, there are winners and there are losers. Obviously, everybody is trying to get, and I hate to say the word, but the best deal for themselves at the moment, and that goes down regionally as well as it does for the entire of the UK. When we look at Liverpool particularly, the strength of Liverpool lays in its docklands, and the city is now returning to that point. We've recently had a major development scheme based up in the Northern Docklands, and that is part of the Peel project. It's Liverpool 2. That's a deep water sea container terminal, and that had a staged opening from the end of 2016, meaning Liverpool is now able to take 2 Trans-Panamax vessels simultaneously into the Docklands, which are the most modern Docklands available in the United Kingdom at the moment, and that actually makes Liverpool the transshipment hub for the UK and Ireland. So when we look at our trading relations as they stand today, around about 65–70% of the goods we consume in the UK arrive at southern ports, and they will be transferred at great expense up towards the north of the country at road and rail. And we all know that that's not particularly the best in the UK at the moment, you know, HS2 coming and everything else. So Liverpool's perfectly positioned when we look at the fact that we're, as a country, Great Britain is now actually looking further afield for its trade and relations. So it will make perfect sense to take advantage of the most modern docklands available in the country. We've recently signed an agreement with 4 of the northern ports. So we'll actually be taking the goods in to the docklands in Liverpool, offloading them and sending them out to the 4 northern ports. So Brexit will make a real opportunity for Liverpool. Yes, it will have its difficulties, as it will for everybody involved. But we must look at the opportunity, and the opportunity is certainly to capture back the vast majority of ocean freight coming into the United Kingdom, and we'll certainly take that in Liverpool.
Alex, thanks very much for that. That's all we have time for now, and we need to go to a commercial break. But please don't go away. Join us again after the break for more discussions on the Liverpool property market and how that can be utilised as a buy-to-let investor. Welcome back to Proper Wealth, the show where we discuss all things wealth creation, including property, with me, Paul Mahoney. Joining me today is Alex Doonan from Acentus Real Estate. Alex is joining us from Liverpool, and we're discussing the Liverpool property market. Thanks for joining me again, Alex. So, Alex, in the break there, we were discussing the fact that a quarter of property in Liverpool is privately rented, and that forecasts expect that figure to increase by about 20% by 2020. How do you feel as though that might affect the Liverpool property market, and how will it affect yields specifically?
Well, from the statistics that you just said there, I think it's worth actually looking at those statistics in a bit more detail. As I say, around about a quarter of the properties in Liverpool are privately rented, which is obviously a real strong indication for the buy-to-let market. And as you quite rightly say there, the National Housing Federation are predicting that the rental demand in Liverpool will continue to rise. And I believe their figures are forecast until 2021. And they're forecasting a further 22% increase on those figures. So the city's rental market is strong. Obviously, people will be looking at these figures and thinking, well, it can't go on forever and a day. You know, is it going to sort of plateau out? At no time soon is anybody who you would look at statistics predicting that Liverpool is going to plateau out. As we mentioned in the earlier part of the show, with regards to the average house prices and everything in Liverpool, there's still an awful lot of room for moving into for Liverpool to be even on a level playing field. So yes, whilst the gains are large, you know, 7% is in terms of an appreciation is big. Yes, a quarter are already currently rented, but you know, the figures for the next 4 or 5 years are predicting a further 22% increase in that. I think from a BTL investor point of view, I think everybody can take heart from those figures and look at them with some certainty that we can certainly imagine for the next 5 to 10 years the rental demand is going to be strong, and I shouldn't imagine that would waver at all, really.
Okay, thanks for that, Alex. What I find really interesting about Liverpool is the fact that economic growth last year was 15%, which significantly outperforms most other cities in the UK and the UK overall quite substantially. That must be having quite a big impact, especially on central Liverpool, the jobs available and the types of people that are living there. How is that affecting everything?
Absolutely, yes. So the change in demographic in the city is clear to see. As you say, you know, I've been in the city for 35 years, and a real simple viewpoint on that would be sort of 20, 25 years ago. If you wanted to, you know, pop out for a family meal, you were very limited in the amount of cuisines that were available. So, you know, you could have Chinese, Indian, or pretty much English, and that was pretty much about it. When you look around the city now, there are some 30 to 40 different cuisines available in all the restaurants, the latest brand new Japanese restaurants opening. So that gives you some indication of the change in the city in terms of its inhabitants, in terms of visitors, and also in terms of its desires and wants for new things actually coming into the city. The city's now becoming more demanding, so it's very much more cultural. And yeah, we have seen a big change in the demographics, particularly when you look at the age of people inside of Liverpool. Liverpool has a very young population compared with the rest of the UK. It's around about, I think it's around about 35% of the city's residents are actually under the age of 30, which again for the buy-to-let investors are a really good indication. A young city, younger guys are obviously much more difficult to achieve regular mortgages at the moment in the UK. So that should be a real good indication for the buy-to-let investors.
Okay, certainly seems like the cost of living and sort of overall the ease of living in Liverpool is quite good compared to a lot of other major cities, and perhaps that's driving some of the attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Liverpool has a growing population. That's a key point to mention. Also, in terms of its demographics, Liverpool has one of the youngest populations in the UK out of any of the major cities. 43% of our residents are under the age of 30, which is obviously a massive indication for buy-to-let investors of the potential inside of the city there. And yeah, a great point there. One of the major attractions to young guys in Liverpool are some of the 4 universities that the city boasts. We have around about 66,000 students, represents just over 10% of the population in Liverpool, which is again an astounding figure. And these guys come from all over the UK, indeed all over the world. And when these guys come to Liverpool, a lot of them will have come from other major cities in the UK, or indeed from further afield. And they will have experienced, high prices of rent, difficulty in obtaining some kind of employment to help them through the studies. Really expensive to get around, to eat. Cost of livings are, really high in many other places. And when these guys arrive in Liverpool, they can't believe it. It's like they can have the cake and eat it. They're continuing with their education. They've got a fantastic social scene available for them. I refer to Liverpool as the 15-minute city. You can pretty much be from one side of the city centre to the others in 15 minutes. Eradicating the need for cars, and indeed paying for public transport. A fantastic bike scheme around the city, helping these guys get around. So yeah, the students are really important to the city there.
Okay, so let's talk about your young professional either coming out of university or moving to Liverpool. Are there the right jobs for these people now? Are they able to earn the right level of wages? Because I know in London, for example, that there's lots of graduates coming out of university, very well educated, and there's just not the jobs for them really. They struggle to find the employment they need. How would you say Liverpool is positioned for employing that type of person?
Yeah, so postgraduate retention in Liverpool's on the up, and it is a big thing for the city. Obviously, I've mentioned earlier in the show many major development schemes and coming into the city, and that is really the tip of the iceberg. So all of these really sort of high-end schemes, employers, they require really high-end staff. These guys who are inside of the city, quite simply, they do wish to stay inside of the city. Once they've been here, you quite rightly made the point, and it's a very good point to talk about, fall in love with the city. That's exactly what pretty much anybody who visits Liverpool does. The city's inhabitants are famed for the humour and the welcoming attitude towards strangers coming in. You're never short of anyone to stop and have a chat to. So yeah, the city does sort of grab hold of people and keep them inside, and especially the young people. Why would they want to live anywhere else? They can have really high-end city centre living, all of the amenities that they would require. And as I say before, the statement, have the cake and eat it, is perfectly valid. They can see a career and a future. Educational facilities are fantastic in Liverpool, both from a high end in terms of further education and universities, and then both from a sort of a regular school, juniors and senior school, and onto the colleges. The Ofsted ratings for Liverpool are on the up each and every year, and the vast majority of educational facilities and organisations in Liverpool have recently been voted outstanding by Ofsted. So all these are major points as to why people put roots down into the city, start a family, and continue to stay. And as I say, population increase year on year for the past decade.
Okay, Alex, talking about buy-to-let, what is the current average property price in Liverpool at the moment?
I'd say the average property price in Liverpool is around about £125,000. If we're talking typically of city centre locations, we look at maybe a one-bed apartment, a one-bed new development in Liverpool, you expect to pay anywhere from sort of 100 to maybe £110,000. Two beds anywhere from sort of 165 up to around about £200,000. So very well priced comparatively with the rest of the UK. Certainly with the yields that the city is predicting for buy-to-let investors being around about 6 or 7%. You quickly knock that back to the rentals, and you can see that the one beds and two beds are more than achievable for the guys who are going to be renting them.
Well, look, I can see why that's very attractive, especially to people that are more used to higher price points. London investors, for example, where they're paying, in some cases 10 times those prices, and about half the yields, I can see why they're being driven to places like Liverpool, especially when you look at the fundamentals that we've been discussing there so far as economic growth, employment growth and infrastructure spending. I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball now, Alex. Where do you see Liverpool going over the next 5 to 10 years? We've spoken about things like employment growth and economic growth. I doubt those things will continue at that height over the coming years. It's great to see that it's happening now, but how do you think that will flow through Liverpool over the coming years?
Other than Everton becoming really successful and the best football team in Liverpool, the future is particularly bright for Liverpool. As I say, all the facts, figures, statistics that we can look at are an upward trajectory. The outside investment promised into the city is continuing. Many schemes are planned for the next sort of 5 and 10 years. In recent times, we've had the complete and utter redevelopment of Lime Street train station. That has been done. We've had extra platforms added and we've had platforms lengthened. The rail company is actually planning on doubling the capacity of Lime Street station. Those guys aren't doing that for nothing. We've had a brand new Royal Hospital in the city that was £340 million worth of development. We've already covered the Liverpool One. Liverpool Water Scheme, which is a mixed-use development, encompasses a multitude of developments going in there. These are all big schemes. Peel are there for the next 25 years, 2 years in already. So Peel are there for the next 23 years moving on. So there's really, a big indication that the private sector are there for many years to come, and that should give a big indication that the city will continue to grow and thrive at least for the next 10 years.
Alex, that's been incredibly insightful. Many thanks for joining us. Some great information there on the strength of Liverpool as a whole, but also very specifically the property market. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for now. Thank you very much for joining us, Alex, and also the viewers. Join us next time on Proper Wealth with me, Paul Mahoney, for more discussions on wealth creation, including property.